All righty, thank you all for joining. I think we just have one last person. And let me make you co-host, Rachel, in case anyone else is like in the waiting room. So you can.
Thank you. Yeah, I can handle that then.
Okay, perfect. Cool. Well, yeah, thank you all for joining. Today we'll be talking about personal statements, how to write one and put your best foot forward for medical school or graduate school. And so to do a quick introduction, my name is Olivia Rye and I work as the Assistant Director of Career Services.
And I'm Rachel Schneider, and I am the coordinator of the Writing Center.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so just to start off with an icebreaker, if you could post in the chat box your major and then what program you hope to apply to. So if you know you want to go to medical school, you can put that. If you're not quite sure, you can put grad school or any other program. That would be awesome. So we know who we're speaking to. And I'll give you all just a minute or so. PA school, awesome. Pre-med PA. Pre-med, med school. Oops, sorry. I was trying to go back to the chat box. Okay. Physical therapy, PA school, medical school. So it looks like a lot of PA and med school. Awesome. Thank you all for participating. Pre-med, med school. Awesome. Cool. So what is a personal statement? This can just be another quick chat box activity. So if you could post in the chat box, what do you think this mysterious document is? What is a personal statement? Any thoughts? Any guesses? What is a personal statement? Showing yourself as a document? Yeah. Relaying your drive to apply to a graduate school? Definitely. Similar to a letter of intent? Yes, it's definitely easy to confuse the two. A letter stating why you would want to pursue your career and your reason for going. Excellent. Yeah, that's a great definition. So all of these are great. And actually, sorry, we'll do one last thing. Statement that sets your intentions for grad school and differentiates you from other applicants. Absolutely. This should definitely show who you are as an individual. So perfect. I'll talk about the definition in a little bit, but just one last quick activity. If you could post in the chat box how confident you feel about writing a personal statement on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 being least confident, 5 being, you know, you feel like you're an expert. 3, 2, 2, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so about average. I see a couple 2s, 1. So hopefully by the end of this, you feel a little bit more confident with this process. Awesome. Okay, cool. Let me exit out of the chat box. Alrighty, so what is a oh my gosh, sorry, my computer's so sensitive. Let me go back. Okay, so what is a personal statement? It's essentially telling your story about how you became interested in medical school or wanting to become a physician or wanting to become a PA or whatever that may be. So it's really telling that story of your journey to that. So is this something that happened? Did you always know you wanted to become a physician, or did a family member get sick and that kind of sparked your interest in the medical field, or you had a fantastic professor, or, you know, whatever that may be. So it's really telling the admissions committee that story, and then your why. So like, what is the purpose behind all of this? Hopefully not just applying to medical school to apply to medical school, or just applying to graduate school just because, but like, what is that deeper meaning behind why you're seeking this path? A personal statement is also a demonstration of your communication skills. So you definitely want it to read well and not be riddled with any sort of typos or grammar mistakes or anything like that, because that's just not a good look. And they're also simultaneously looking at how, good of a writer you are, essentially. Your personal statement should also review why you want to attend that specific institution. And just as a side note, as you're submitting these documents, like double, triple check you're submitting it to the right institution, because people sometimes, I can see how it's a little bit easy to do when you're submitting so many applications, but just double, triple check, get a second pair of eyes, make sure it's the correct institution. And so maybe talk about their mission statement, vision statement, or their specific faculty that you want to learn from. Anything about that institution as to why you want to attend would be fantastic to highlight. And then lastly, you want your personal statement to be personal yet professional. So I always say your personal statement should not read like an academic paper or anything like that. It should have a little bit more character or personality to it, but you still want to keep it professional. So with all that being said, again, just have someone else look at it if you're not quite sure where you fall within that. And with this, I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Yes. Sorry, I was letting someone else into the room. So in terms of your preparation, the first thing you need to do is closely look at the program requirements. In the Writing Center, we work with a lot of students on their personal statements, hand in hand with the career services. And one error we sometimes notice is students will mistake number of characters for number of words. For example, many medical school programs and dentist school programs, I don't think we have anyone pre-dentistry here today, will have a character requirement and say no more than 4,500 characters, including spaces, or 5,400 characters, including spaces, which is dramatically different than that number of words. And so pay close attention to those restrictions, because often we find students have a lot to say, and then they realize that they only have 1 page or 1.5 pages to do it. And then also read very closely what they're asking. Many programs will ask a broad question, such as, why do you want to go to medical school? Or why do you want to be a PA? For all you pre-PA students, I often have students come into the Writing Center and they'll talk about what their interest in medicine is in general. But if you're applying to a specific profession like a PA, you will have to know why a PA specifically. Why not pursue nursing, or why not go for your MD? What is it about being a physician's assistant that really draws you to the field? There's one more person here. And then I also encourage you to echo what Olivia was saying, to research the programs, research the schools overall, and look at the faculty. And when I talk about research the programs, most programs will have a set of outcomes that they want their students to meet by the time they graduate. So see what those outcomes are, because that'll speak to the values of that institution, of that particular program there. So if one of the outcomes is working with diverse patient populations, maybe in your personal statement, you'll want to mention your experiences working with diverse patient populations, or your desire to do so. Or if a program has a particular outreach clinic with a particular sector in the city in which they're located, look into that and then mention it, because we're looking for students to demonstrate their motivation. Medical school is hard, PA school is hard. And so we want to see both your intrinsic motivation, so we get a sense that when things get hard, you are motivated to push through, but also that you've done your research, that this isn't, your 80th application, but rather that you've taken the time to really explore the program and say that this program is a good fit for you, and therefore you'll be able to argue that you are a good fit for that program. If you're going, I don't notice, I'm looking to see if someone had said research. If you are looking into research, it is useful to note specific faculty members. If you're looking to go on to a master's or doctoral program in microbiology or something like that, because often those admissions committees will be looking to pair students with a faculty mentor to think of whose lab you would be in. Other programs that might not be as important, but you should always research the program. And then finally, create an outline. So remember that you're selling yourself as a good fit for the program, you're explaining your motivations, and you're making an argument that the program's a good fit for you. So consider those basic questions and outline your personal statement and create a draft that can be reviewed by others. That way, I've never seen a perfect first draft in the Writing Center for a personal statement. There's always some sort of work that can be done. So never leave it to the last moment. Make sure that you're planning at least a month in ahead, I would say. I think I see Olivia's nodding as well. If you plan a month in ahead, that gives you time to bring your draft to, and we'll touch upon this a little further later, but bring it to faculty members who might be writing a recommendation for you, particularly for you pre-med folks who will be seeking those faculty recommendations. And bring it to the Writing Center, bring it to the Career Center. The more eyes you get on it, the more feedback, the more polished that piece is going to be.
Excellent. So just a few pointers. So with your personal statement, you really want it to be personal, hence the name, but you want it to be descriptive. So what you want to avoid is like, I've always wanted to help people, so I'm becoming a physician, or, I'm pursuing the medical school. You want it to really tell a deeper story, like what about medical school specifically, or PA school, like Rachel said, really interests you? Because any field, arguably, you could say helps people. If you're a cosmetologist, you're helping people. So like, what about this specifically draws you? Again, have your rough draft reviewed. I know when I did my personal statement for graduate school, I probably had, I don't know, like 6 or 7 rough drafts before it was polished. So it's a lot of work. It is time consuming. So you do want to give yourself a lot of time, because the people you want to review it may not have availability right when you need it. So just, give yourself plenty of time. And then also, it's always nice if you can, in your personal statement, depending on how much space you have, to talk about like, what is the contribution you want to make to your field? So I've met with some students that are like, I really want to work in rural health, work at like a rural doctor's office and serve underserved populations. Or I've worked with other students that were like, I would love to go back to my home country and do some like pro bono work. So if you do have some semblance of an idea of what you would love to do, post-graduation and making that impact, that's a great thing to highlight as well. And just kind of adds to individualizing who you are as a candidate as well. And then, yeah, just giving examples, already said that. So maybe talking through if you've shadowed physicians that were impactful, if you've worked in a hospital, served as an EMT, phlebotomist, anything like that, again, is just great to highlight as well. So with your personal statement, these are the don'ts. So you don't want to make this like a humorous document, make any sort of jokes. Hopefully all of this you all already know, but you never know who your audience is. So just keep it not on the serious side, but just not humorous. You also don't want it to be cliche, as I said, like I've always wanted to help people, stuff like that. That's very cliche. Another thing is, it shouldn't just be like reiterating your resume. So although you do want to discuss some of the impactful experiences you have, you also want to add that story element of, why you're interested in the field, and then, your contribution as well, which is not necessarily included in your resume. And I always say like your first paragraph of your personal statement should be kind of that hook paragraph. So be engaging, interesting, and really hooks that reader in to understand and want to read about who you are as a candidate. And I'll just give an example. So I remember at my last job, I was helping a physics student who was applying to a PhD program, and his first paragraph, he kind of like brought you into the classroom when he was in high school, of when he like really became passionate about physics and the impact that that teacher had on him. And it was very engaging, of course, since I still remember it, one job later. So you really want it to be captivating and interesting as to, what interested you. Also, you don't want to include like the issues of healthcare, the things you don't like. I have seen some personal statements like that, and it leaves more of a negative taste than feeling inspired and wanting to admit you to the program. And while there are obviously lots of issues with the healthcare system, this is not the essay to talk about that. So and then wait until the last minute. I didn't know if you want to add anything, Rachel. I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I will add, again, everyone knows the healthcare system is broken in so many ways, so you don't have to reiterate it in your personal statement. Your personal statement, remember, is about you and not necessarily about the system. And something else you want to think about in terms of a don't is what we call, you'll hear us in the Writing Center say, show, don't tell, or tell a story. And what that means is, if you have an impactful experience, give us those details. As Olivia noted, for example, I've read papers where students talked about holding someone's hand while they receive chemotherapy, and talked very passionately about the conversations they've had with one individual, and that point of physical connection and how important that seemed to be. You can tell a story, and by telling that story, that actually PA student who's now practicing PA, it was a number of years ago, she was able to communicate without listing out that she was compassionate, that she was a good listener, that she communicated between the providers and the patient's family, all through telling this story, which spoke so much to her own motivations for becoming a PA, some, very position very much focused on patient-centered care and spending time with patients. It demonstrated her interpersonal skills, all without her having to say, I am compassionate and I'm friendly and I have excellent verbal communication and can communicate respectfully. So when you're thinking about impactful experiences, think about often maybe 2 or 3 characteristics that would be ideal in your future profession. And then bring that into that story and say, well, what story illustrates that I am a dedicated worker? Or what story talks about how I can overcome challenges in the workplace, or just challenges in my personal life in general? Or a story that might highlight what type of provider you want to be one day. So I think that's all I wanted to add to that. It's kind of moving into the do's of personal statements.
Yeah.
But I think this will also move us into our next slide.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I was going to add just super quickly, just to add on to that. I had a PA student, he was doing his personal statement, just to give another example. And he told a story about how when he worked at the hospital as a CNA, he specifically highlighted one patient who was on suicide watch. And he talked about that whole encounter and how he sat with this individual and asked him questions and just tried to make him feel seen and heard. And anyways, that's just like another example of how you can sort of showcase that. So it just made me think of that story, but yeah, passing along to you.
All right. So career services is the excellent place to go to get a lot of this topic focused feedback. We in the Writing Center can help as well, but a lot of what we do in the Writing Center is help you communicate at the sentence level what you want in your essay. So the first thing I want to note is that grammar, syntax, and spelling errors, they all count. If you are making a claim that you are detail-oriented, but you have a lot of spelling errors or grammar errors, that's going to make you seem less professional, and it's going to undermine your message. And I note that you should proofread, don't rely on spell check, because some common ones I see in resumes is student wants to write assess, but it says asses. They're both words. Spell check won't catch that. And it's kind of embarrassing to have on your CV. Or, really any sort of homonym or writing the word the twice. Sometimes that won't pick up. One way to really proofread effectively is to have someone else read your paper back to you, because they can't fill in the ideas the way that you do when you read your own work writing. So if you have a friend or a family member who can read aloud to your personal statement to help you proofread, that helps. Another way to proofread without relying on spell check is to make your writing weird to yourself by making the font very large or a different color or both. Something that will make you pay closer attention to the words. So that's just my general piece on grammar, syntax, and spelling errors. The next you'll see here is avoid passive voice. So you've been encouraged to use passive voice in your science labs, and hopefully you've been encouraged to use active voice in your social science courses, in your writing courses. Passive voice and an active voice refers to the relationship between the subject and verb in the sentence. So if I said Rachel runs, that's active voice because Rachel, the subject, is running, and that's the verb. When you use to be statements like was and were, that's passive and makes the subject of the sentence, which usually the personal statement is going to be you, seem like you're just letting life happen to you. So a common error I see in personal statements is using passive voice to say, I was given the opportunity to. That makes it sound like you're just kind of passively laying there, waiting for opportunities to occur to you. But part of that personal statement, as we said, it is to emphasize your motivation to pursue the field that you want to enter. And so instead of saying, I was given the opportunity, you would say, perhaps, I sought a shadowing opportunity. Make it seem like you're actively looking. Or I was elected to vice president. You could say, I ran for vice president of this organization because I wanted to. And then that leaves an opening for you to talk about some of the projects you might have done in a club or an organization. And the career services is also an excellent place to get some tips on using active language and active verbs to describe your past job and club experiences in your CV and also in your personal statements. I also usually tell students not to use I hope, I wish, or I feel, because those can be seen as hedging language where you don't seem as confident in what you're saying. So if you say, I hope that you contact me about this program so we can speak further, it sounds like you're like, I'm not quite sure I belong here. But if you say, I'm looking forward to speaking with you, that makes it sound like you're confident that you are someone they would want to speak with. We also touched upon informal language a little bit on the previous slide, but as part of your memorable anecdotes, don't make it be about questionable language or peppering in curse words. And also remember that slang is an idiom that has a meaning. It's a phrase that has meaning in a particular community, but might not have a clear meaning for people in other communities. For example, if you are using slang words for your used by your generation when you're talking with your friends, but you are applying to a panel of people who are 50 years old, they might not understand certain references or certain slang terms. We also suggest that you not be repetitive or negative. Sometimes students will try to explain, say, a failure in an early course in their personal statement and just say like, oh, this was just like a super hard time and the lab instructor didn't, spoke with an accent and I couldn't understand and da, 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 da. That would be a negative piece. And I know I have this on a future slide, but if you do have a challenge that you need to acknowledge on your application, the idea is to take responsibility for that challenge, note that challenge briefly, but then very quickly move along to how you overcame that challenge or how you address that challenge. So if you failed LIB 111 your first semester because it was COVID and everything was online and confusing, You could then say, I had difficulty in this environment, so the changes I made were I went to the writing center, and the next semester I talked with my faculty member more when I had questions. And I made sure I took one of the very few in-person classes because I understood that I do better in an in-person environment. That can acknowledge a failure, but then note how you actively, there's that term yet again, sought ways to improve. And so again, that makes you seem motivated. It makes you seem responsible, and will speak to, I guess, your resilience as well. In terms of writing style, I think this gets into content a little bit. Controversial topics, better to exclude those. I'm not sure exactly how those might come in when we're not talking about wider systems, but you never know I'll say the political or ethical bent of your admissions committee. So better to leave controversial topics aside. And then plagiarism. Don't even Google medical school personal statement. Don't even be tempted. Don't go to ChatGPT and put in personal statements. There is a sure sign that there will be an ethical violation if you're caught with that, and they are close readers about that sort of thing. I will note that even here at MCPHS, we have faculty who are starting to run work through the AI checkers now on top of our Turnitin functions. Just know that those same precautions are going to be taken by admissions committees as well. And if you are caught plagiarizing, you are viewed as an ethics risk. You're not going to be admitted on the basis of a plagiarized essay. And plus, it's not going to be true to who you are. I don't know, Olivia, if you wanted to add anything to that, but.
Yeah, I mean, no, totally. I feel like if you're going to go through this much work of applying to medical school or graduate school, then don't plagiarize. Because yeah, you could be shooting yourself in the foot with that. So yeah, I mean, if you need help generating ideas or brainstorming, like we're happy to do that in an appointment. So yeah.
And then I guess I wanted to quickly note here, since this is the flip side. I know you might have been talking about this, or if you just go that one slide over. The other side of that hedging language is the confident language as well. And so again, I want to just focus on that. When you're thinking of personal statements, they're looking for you to prove that you are motivated. I'll think this one was your slide, Olivia.
Yeah, so yeah, looking for evidence that you're motivated, that you have actively participated in your development in pursuing graduate school, medical school, PA school. I would also say your personal statement, you don't necessarily have to go through any challenges you've faced unless you feel like it's, you know, a pivotal part of your story. Like I remember I had one student, he talked about how he grew up in poverty in LA and how that really shaped his view on healthcare. And, you know, like it was a meaningful part of his story. So he incorporated it in a way that wasn't like super negative, but how that propelled him forward to pursue his passion. So in that sense, I think it's okay. But again, you don't want it to be like this very negative document. You want them to feel inspired, like, wow, I would love for this person to be my PA or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think I know the dental school applications often have supplements that say, if you've had any challenges in your academic record, please briefly explain them here. There are some programs that might have supplemental essays in addition to your personal essay that might ask for that type of information.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, you could definitely include it there. If you did want to put in your personal statement, again, just a short part of it, because you already have so much content to cover. You don't want that to be the main focus. So this is both of us. So what to include content, again, the beginning, I think, should be really like who you are, your story of how you were introduced to this field and how that, again, that passion sparked or developed. And then really showcasing some experiences that further solidified that passion, I would say. And then I like to see after that a little bit of like why you're wanting to apply to that school / What impact do you want to make on your profession? You know, what do you want your legacy to be? Not to be super dramatic, but like what impact do you want to make on your field? I don't know if you want to add anything, Rachel.
Sure. I also encourage you to think of your skills more broadly. Sometimes in the Writing Center, we have students come in and they're only thinking of perhaps academic organizations or like their grades and what they've done in lab, but they forget that they're fluent in 2 other languages or that they have personal volunteering experiences that might speak to their interpersonal skills and their ability to work on it as a team. So in terms of unique skills, extracurricular experience, think beyond just what did I do in school these past 3 to 4 years, and just look at your life overall. Because there is a lot that can be mined in terms of explaining who you are and how you became who you are, and also what unique contributions, what unique perspectives you could bring to the graduate cohort at your medical school or PA school.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. It just reminded me, just generating ideas for you all. Another student I looked at, she was applying to ophthalmology school, and she immigrated from, I want to say, Afghanistan. And so she talked about how she would have to translate for her grandmother at the doctor's, and how as a medical practitioner, she wanted to bring that cultural sensitivity to her own practice. So like, these are all just things you can incorporate to show who you would be as a physician or as a PA, or fill in the blank. I'm just trying to think. I think we covered everything with that. Yes, perfect. I'll also add, if you don't know which area you want to specialize in, that's okay. If you do, then that's a great thing to highlight. Like if you know you want to focus on like women's health or whatever it may be, you could definitely talk about that. But if not, that's not that big of a deal. And then I would say, if you haven't started your personal statement yet, which I would assume most of you all have not, really just take some time to just think about what you want to talk about, talk to your family about, what are some attributes that you think that I have that would be really impactful that maybe I overlook. Like, I think it's a great time to start having some of those conversations and just thinking through like, what has impacted me? Like what led to this path? And yeah, we already said, just have it reviewed by multiple people. I would even encourage you, like once you have your first rough draft, maybe just plug it into Grammarly so you can just get some of those like small mistakes already fixed before having other people look at it. And then also reading your personal statement aloud is also very helpful, because again, you catch some of those mistakes that you wouldn't otherwise reading it in your mind.
And I'll also add, if you have particular faculty members with whom you've developed a relationship, or who are in your profession or in your field, talk to them about what they would recommend to focus on. Ask them if they know anyone in that program, because we have faculty here from, worked at other schools, and have experience in social networks all over the place. And they might be able to give you some very pointed feedback on your personal statement, on your CV, and so forth. So take advantage of the links that you have here at this school. So, not just say the Career Center or the Writing Center or friends or family, but when we have professionals in the field, that works too, if you've shadowed someone or if there's someone at your workplace, but also our faculty members might have some insights as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the more eyes you have on it, again, just the more refined and polished your personal statement can be. So I think that's everything covering personal statements. And then I'll just talk really quickly about just some of our resources. But before I jump into that, are there any questions related to personal statements? Any concerns, questions, thoughts? And you're welcome.
Yes, I have a question. Are there prompts ever? Do they give like a set of prompts that we would choose from, or is it generally just personal statement, submit it here.
So
For medical school specifically, sorry.
okay, it really depends. Rachel, are you aware? I think it's usually a little bit more about like, tell me about your journey and kind of like the general personal statement outline.
Yeah, I mean, it really differs by institution. So different institutions will have slightly different prompts. Sometimes a big general one for medical school is just, why do you want to go to our medical school? Or why do you want to be a PA for PA programs? But sometimes they might ask, why do you want to attend our specific program? Or there's some that might have supplemental essays as well. As I alluded to, dental school is a big one for supplemental essays. So there might be a personal statement saying, why do you want to be a PA or a PT? And then a secondary one that says, what motivated you to enter the medical field? And if there are supplemental essays, pay attention to those so you're not repeating yourself between the two. That's actually a wonderful opportunity to expand who you are for the readers of those essays, for those admissions committees. But you can probably do some research into the programs and find the programs that interest you, what their prompts are by looking at their application materials. If that hopefully responds to that question.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And you're welcome to just unmute yourself or post in the chat box.
I have a question.
Sure.
Mine is kind of specific. So I'm pre-med PA, and I was just kind of wondering how I can explain that, like, I want to be a PA without putting down other professions, like saying, oh, I want to be a PA because I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. I don't want to be a doctor. So how can I like highlight like the PA differences without like talking down on other professions?
Yeah, so, oh, sorry, you can go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, no. I was going to say, we see that fairly often. And so one thing you can do, and maybe this was where you're going, Olivia, is talk about maybe a particular experience you had with PAs. And that's where we find a lot of students say, I first learned about this field because I have a special relationship with my own PA, or I shadowed various fields. And what really drew me about my PA experience was, and then keep it positive that way by talking specifically what I saw in my PA shadowing experience or in my relationship with this PA. So you don't have to go through and say, here's all the reasons I don't want anything else. If you can just talk deeply about what draws you to the field.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, it's a good chance to show you thoroughly understand the profession and how it does differentiate. So like PAs, for example, can switch specialties. You can go from fertility to bedside to this to that. So like highlighting maybe the things about the profession that interest you versus you don't necessarily have to compare it to others.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of overlap between nursing and PA in that regard. So again, I would focus on what drives you PA, and you don't need to say, this is why I don't want to be a nurse, because if we're saying it's patient-centered care, well, we have multiple health professions that provide patient-centered care or develop close relationships with patients, or that have that flexibility of working in different specialties. So again, just keep it really positive on what you have chosen. There are comparisons online between two, but they're just so closely aligned that the best way to really approach it is talk about personal connection with being a PA, what draws you to that, without saying, I don't want to be a nurse. When I said talk about the profession specifically, as Olivia said, it's about demonstrating you know what that profession entails, but it's also keeping you just that broad statement of, I want to help people, or I just want to work in medicine. So the idea is saying, I've found this one focus, here's why it fits who I am. And by discussing that, I'll demonstrate my knowledge of this position.
Are there any other questions? Yes. No. Okay. Perfect. So just to conclude, We do have a number of resources on our Career Services Blackboard page. So if you go to just literally go on Google, type in MCPHS Blackboard, it will load this page and you would just click visit our website right here. And you don't even have to be logged into Blackboard. You can still look at it. And then this is what the website looks like. So on the left-hand side, if you do want to schedule an appointment with us, you can click make an appointment and it'll take you to the link to schedule one. And then we do also have personal statement resources on our Blackboard under how-to guides, which you'll see on the left-hand side. And you'll see, sorry, it's like down here on the bottom left. And then I'll also put up this PowerPoint on our Blackboard page as well. So with that, if you have any additional questions, you're welcome to email us. My email is olivia.rye@mcphs.edu. So happy to brainstorm with you, look at your personal statement, all that fun stuff.
And similarly, you can write to me as well, rachel.schneider@mcphs.edu. If you forget that or don't know how to spell my last name, if you go to the Writing Center LibGuide, I'm the contact information there, and anywhere else you have Writing Center links will probably eventually come back around to me. And again, people in the Writing Center are here to, even if you just want to talk about general ideas that you put into a personal statement, we're here to talk about just help you with that outline of, I want to communicate these things about myself. I was thinking of using this story, or this story. Which one do you think is more impactful? How do I come across here? We're happy to talk with you about your ideas, even before you start the drafting process. And then, of course, we're probably refer you also back to Career Services, and we're happy to help you polish up your final drafts as well.
Yeah, definitely meet with them. I can say working in Career Services, I always can tell like a huge difference between the students that have met with the Writing Center and those that haven't. So yeah, definitely use that resource. It's fantastic. And then again, you can schedule an appointment with us through Cardinal Link. If you do have any additional questions, as I mentioned, you can email me directly or you can email careerservices@mcphs.edu. But otherwise, thank you all for joining and good luck with your personal statement process.
Thank you all.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.